Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you take things day by day. Happy New Year! I am so excited to be sharing this episode with you today on January 1st because this guest story is so inspiring, and I think this conversation is a great one to kick off the new year. EsaBella Anna Karena Strickland wears many hats, so I'll just name a few. EsaBella is a multi-award winning filmmaker, producer, screenwriter, published author, and she is a TED Ed speaker, which is how I had the pleasure of meeting her in New York City in October. So, without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring EsaBella Anna Karena Strickland.
My name is EsaBella Anna Karena Strickland, and I started off in the film industry as an actor. Well, originally I was a little bit of a filmmaker. I was part of Young Filmmakers, which is a program that I did, and it kind of set me off into this world of entertainment that I didn't think I'd be a part of because, you watch on TV when you're a kid and you're like, oh, this is another world I'll never be a part of. But I saw the depth and the background of how hard it is to make a movie. And after that, I just realized that I could show my own story and support girls around the world who feel like they don't have a voice. And I've had a hard time in my life, and I never thought I would be here in this moment talking to you just because of reflection of what I've gone through. I was bullied for a very long time. I had a hard start to life. It was just really tough. But after that, kerfuffle of being bullied and I got moved to a different school, I felt empowered. And my dad helped me write a book. So I published a book when I was, I think, 13. And after that, I'm so proud to say that I've done that. It just it's so weird sometimes. And after that, I started doing animation and I wrote scripts, and we have a lot of stuff in the making right now. And even the fact that it's in the making is so cool to me. I don't care if there's an end product, just the fact it's happened.
I love that. I think that is such a great start, and I'm so excited to talk with you again. Like I said, of course, we've met. We got to do our TED Ed talk together, which was very cool. And I know a little bit about your story and kind of what inspired you to get started with this change-making journey that you've been on. But can you tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to really get involved with raising awareness about different issues? Because you really do touch on a lot of different issues. So I know that probably we could take hours to talk about your
Oh,
whole
yeah.
story, but tell me a little bit about what got you involved in the world of advocacy and change making in particular.
Well, I guess it started when I first talked to a counselor, which is kind of funny because they're supposed to be your advocate. And it just felt like I was getting repeated back my problems, which works for some people, but it didn't work for a 7-year-old who didn't want to hear a bunch of bad things that she was saying. So I jumped through counseling sessions. I did a bunch of different forms of counseling, and I realized I didn't feel like I had an advocate. Your parents are supposed to be your advocate, obviously, but my parents were going through a hard time. My mom owned a store, my dad owns his own business, and I was going through school with people who didn't fully understand the meaning of neurodivergencies and what it means to be different. Obviously, there were people who were different in my class, but it really boiled down to me visually being different. Like, I was a bit bigger and I couldn't really read very well. I couldn't read until 6th grade properly. I didn't know my times tables, which a 6th grader is supposed to know. And I realized that my voice felt quieter than the rest of my class. And I changed schools. Though I screamed and shouted as much as I could, I don't want to change because I hate change. Most people with neurodivergencies do. And after I moved, I became more aware that I was different, and not in a bad way. I was just different, and different can be good because who wants to be the same as everyone else? That's how we get incredible women like you and the people that we met at our TED Ed. It shows that we have the bravery to go on with our lives being the way that we are. And I learned the meaning of ADHD and dyslexia and dysgraphia, even though I didn't have it, or autism, deeper meanings of anxiety. And I realized so many people around us have these issues, go through life, but we can't see it. And just because we can't see these problems doesn't mean that they're not there. And many people, like many girls who have read my book and who've talked to me about how they feel the same way, I feel like I can possibly be their advocate. I talked to a young girl and she's having trouble in school, and I talked to her about how it's temporary and how the people in her class that are acting the way they do might just be jealous of how cool she is. And that's something I would have wanted to hear because I would have been like, oh my God, you think I'm cool, really? It would have been so fun to hear. But I feel like through all of that, through the beginnings of my life, I realized that I want to be an advocate for people who are neurodivergent, people who are similar to me, who have been bullied, or who had a hard start at life, or even women, because, through all the scariness that's happening right now, I don't want even my kids or my younger cousins to grow up in a world that isn't safe for them.
I think that you just touched on so much there. And again, I do think that we could
Sorry.
talk for like hours. But I think you talked a little bit about the book, and I just think that's so, so amazing. And I'll link all of the information down in the description of this episode so then people can check it out because I'm sure that people will want to after hearing that. Can you tell me about acting and where that started for you? Because I think it's so interesting that you're saying that change is hard. And I think that with you, it's so interesting because you are just constantly doing things that involve change. And so I love that you're kind of challenging yourself, it feels like to me. But I think acting involves a lot of change. You're bouncing around to different places and you're picking up different roles. And I just wondered what brought that up for you. Does acting come easy for you? You said that, you were inspired to do it when you were younger. Tell me a little bit more about that and how acting has played a role in your life.
Oh, that goes back a long ways. I always like to be creative, like most kids do. I love to draw, I love to paint, I love to, put on little plays for my parents, home movie style. And it got to the point where my parents would enroll me in like dance, jazz, all of the creative arts kind of things. Even like, I don't know, I was like fashion design class because I wanted to try things, but I didn't want the change. Like I wanted to just try, dip my toe in and, get out. Because if I don't like it, then I'm not going to do it. It was kind of a hard time. But I tried acting in a drama class that I had in second grade. And we went to a big theater and it was called Clowning Around because we were a bunch of clowns doing like children doing really childish things. And I had one joke and I remember it to this day. It was, what's a baker's favorite game? Tic-tac-toe. And
That's
my
so
God,
good. That is
it's
so
stuck to
good.
me.
I'm
There's
so
like a
glad that
little
that's the one
kid.
thing that you remember. That's
Yeah,
so
of course.
good.
That's what started my acting career, a joke about bread. Yeah.
That's so
So
good.
yeah. Oh God, I can't believe that. After that, I just liked being on stage and I realized it was really fun. And it gave me that voice that I didn't have before. Though it was lines written on a page that I couldn't read, if they're repeated to me, I'll remember. So that's how I memorized. It's a terrible technique. Don't do that. Learn how to read first. But I just didn't feel stuck in that world. The spotlight's on, I feel confident, though most people get stage fright. And as I developed in my life, I gained anxiety as people go through puberty. I didn't want to be on stage as much. I got scared. I realized that there's so much more at stake, you know, like how the way people looked at me, I guess. But I went into acting, stage acting at Arts Umbrella, which is like a summer camp or like a all year intensive in Vancouver. And actually, pause. I did musical theater first because I was in choir and it felt like a mix of things that I really liked. And we did The Wizard of Oz and Macbeth. But it wasn't Macbeth, it was like a, kind of screwed up version of it. But I just really fell in love with it because we got to write the script. And that kind of made me realize that this isn't the only form of acting. There's also TV acting. So I asked my dad, can I try acting? So we got my great first headshots. They were amazing for their first ones, I might say. But I remember going to my very first audition, and it was a cattle call. And if you don't know what a cattle call is, it's when the people doing the audition, oh, the casting agents, yes, they find a bunch of people who look exactly the same and just look and make sure that their mannerisms are correct or their nose is in the right place, or even they like their t-shirt, which is kind of weird to me. But and there's just a bunch of brown-haired, brown-eyed girls in a room, and I was like, is this what acting is? There's just a bunch of duplicates of myself around in this a very small room, might I add. And like I signed my name in and I was super nervous and I only had to say one line that they gave me. And obviously I didn't get it because if I did, that would have been super cool. But over the years, I've gone through maybe hundreds of auditions and I've only gotten a handful. And that's okay. This is a very harsh industry based on how you look now, not how you act, how you say the line. It's your reputation and how you look. And that's how this industry has devolved. But I kind of fell in love with the fact that there were a bunch of people who were passionate about portraying someone else. I love being myself, but sometimes I want to be a spy. Sometimes I want to be in a horror movie. And even the fact that I just got to be a part of the auditioning process was super fun. And it made me realize so many people can do auditioning. So many. You can just go on Actors Access and be like, oh, this one's nice. But you obviously need to do your research. Please do your research first. It was incredible to me how I could just jump in and be a part of a community that, yes, is harsh, but if you find the right people, you're going to be supported.
I love that. I think that you've shared actually a lot of great advice throughout this. I don't know if you realized it, but you've shared lots of little tidbits of wisdom, which I think is definitely what I expected from you after seeing your TED talk. I'll also link that in the description because it was amazing. And everyone, I got to see it live, so I win.
Yeah.
But um, what is one lesson throughout all of this work that you've done that you wish that you would have known when you started raising awareness about different things, putting yourself out there for all these different opportunities? I think that you've had so many cool, not even phases of your life because you've done all of them at the same time. But what is one thing that you wish that you've carried with you throughout all of this that you know now? But if you could share it with somebody listening to this, what would that be?
Well, I think a good analogy is when I was younger, I hated foods that I didn't know, or even if they touched, a very neurodivergent thing, or even like kid thing. And I just hated trying things. And my mom would tell me, eat the amount of your age. So I tried a little bit. If I was 3, I'd have 3 bites. If I was 5, I'd have 5 bites. If I was 10 and still not liking it, I would have 10 bites. And you take things as they go. Take them in small bites, not big bites. And even sailing, my dad would tell me, take it day by day. Take it a small bit at a time because you can't overwhelm yourself with so much work, so many things to do, a big to-do list. You can have big aspirations, but take them one at a time and do well at the ones that you want. That kind of got me into trying things like trying acting, trying ballet, trying figure skating, trying art, doing animation. It made me want to try. And not even like, oh, I'm going to try it for a day. Like, try as hard as I can for the time that I'm doing it and see how well I do. See if I'm tired. If I'm tired, then it's not for me. If I'm really enjoying it and I can do it for hours on end and not realize it's been 12 hours of me sitting at a computer drawing, then maybe that's for me. And that's how I got to the point of realizing I can do anything I want when I grow up. I'm still growing up. And, adults ask me at Thanksgiving while we're eating, what do you want to be when you grow up still? And I don't know, an animator, a medical animator, a medical illustrator, maybe still an actor, maybe an advocate for anyone who needs it. It's just trying and trying in the way that you take it, trying day by day, trying minute by minute. If you pick up crochet and you realize you're not good at it, put it down and try another day. Just try.
I love that. That was great advice. And actually, now I'm going to ask you for a little bit more, but
Yeah,
this
of
one is more
course.
specific to change making specifically, because I do think that you said, you want to be an advocate. You're already making so much change, and you've already, I'm sure, inspired so many people. And like you said, people reaching out to you about your book, and there are so many people, I'm sure, that have watched you speak and have been so inspired. So that's all making change, and just sharing your story is making change as well. So I just wanted to say that I think you're already there,
Thank you.
and I'd expect that you'll probably continue all of this work. So I'm super excited to follow along with all of the things that you have coming. But I have one more question for you. What advice do you want to share with young people who might be listening to this and want to make a change, but might not know how to get started with that work?
Well, it's really hard in a world where you're growing up and going through changes that your body's going through that you don't really know what's happening, especially considering it's new. Realizing that you have people around you you might not see. I know I have my family around me, but just because they're mad at me in that moment doesn't mean that they don't have my back. And even if you're in a situation where you don't have family around you who is safe, you have yourself. And I know that sounds sad, but a year ago we were going through the Atlantic crossing on a sailboat. And at some points I felt, because I'm around a bunch of strangers, I felt like I only had myself. And that was enough. And the fact that I could get to that point of thinking back years prior to that, I felt so incredibly alone in a world full of people. But I wasn't. I had myself. And even telling myself, okay, you got it, you can do it. I know it's cheesy, but looking yourself in the mirror and saying that you can do it does actually lower your cortisol levels and, increase your mood. It can increase dopamine production, and you don't need other things to increase that, like substances. And also surrounding yourself with people who do believe in you. It's very hard to catch when you want to be with such cool people all the time, but if you don't feel good around them, if you leave feeling like you're less than, then they're not the group for you. And I've learned that the hard way. And that will be a lesson that, I don't know, even 60-year-olds will go through in the reading group, but it's a lesson that will be carried on throughout your life. And the person that you've always had by your side from day one was yourself. And telling yourself that you can do it, telling yourself you got it day by day. And again, I know it's very cheesy, but it does work.
It was so great to talk with EsaBella again, and I think that she was such a great guest to kick off 2025. EsaBella shared so many inspiring experiences throughout our conversation, and I found it really interesting to hear about everything that she's learned throughout her life. I want to end by highlighting one piece of advice that EsaBella shared, which really resonated with me, especially as we enter the new year with lots of resolutions and goals. While it's great to dream big and be ambitious, it's also important to keep in mind that change comes when you take things day by day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find EsaBella on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I included those links in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.